So we're back. Part two. We were talking about Selma. And I was talking about how the movie sets up, lets us know what's at stake and everything that is to happen. And it's not it's not a I mean, it is structured beautifully, and it starts that way by setting up the atmosphere of the times and the things that are at stake in two ways: the death toll among black people at the time because of ignorance and indifference, and the other thing is the voting rights. Both of those are addressed right at the beginning. The movie opens with the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, which in the movie was kind of a jump scare because I wasn't expecting it. My mind was still getting into the movie, and all of a sudden we see the four girls and there's an explosion. It's nothing graphic, but it did, it startled me because I was still getting sort of oriented. And then then there's another scene where we are in a voter registration office, and there's a black woman and she's filling out the forms. And she goes up to the window and she hands the clerk the paperwork. And the clerk kind of looks down the end of his nose at her. And he starts asking her questions that I suspect that he would not ask if she were white. He says, "Do you know the preamble?" And right off the bat, she knows it. And then he says, "Do you know how many county judges there are in the state of Alabama?" And she says 67. And then he says, "Name them." And she can't name one of them. Who could? Really, who could? And he takes this big stamp and he stamps "denied" on her paperwork. So that way we understand how it is for not just her, but thousands of black people in Alabama at the time. The performances. Let's get to the performances. This actor that I've never heard of him, but I have a feeling I'll hear from him in the future. David Oyelowo is his name. He's a British actor, and he plays Martin Luther King. And one of the things I love about his performance is that he is able to get Martin Luther King out of the status of legend and bring him sort of just back down to earth. And in doing so, he's able to, when I see him on screen, what I'm seeing is just a humble preacher. Just a southern preacher who is really an ordinary person. And all the stress that's on him, and all the fighting that's on him, and you can see it there. It's all in his eyes. The weariness and the years that have gone on. This is 10 years after he started, after the bus boycotts. So it's not just an impression, but he really wants us to know Martin Luther King as a person. Because as we tend to do, we tend to take ordinary people who do great things and make them into more than just a person. We tend to put them in sainthood. That's human nature. But as I say, I like this movie a lot. If there is a problem, it's probably just in the fact that as I'm looking at David Oyelowo, I'm never seeing Martin Luther King. And that's not a fault of the actor. That is not a fault of the actor. What I'm seeing in him is, I feel, a man playing someone who is very difficult to play. We know Martin Luther King physically, vocally, like the letters in our own name. And he's one of the most famous men in the 20th century. And it's very, very, very difficult to imitate that without it coming off like an impression. So I was a little distracted by looking for that. I felt that I always, at all times, felt that I was watching an actor. I was always watching an actor playing the role. That's not really a criticism of the filmmaking or the actor. It's just, this is an extremely difficult role to play. It's like if someone were playing Bob Hope. We know what Bob Hope looked like. We know what he sounded like. So it's extremely difficult to really get. It's really hard to embody. The other problem I had was that scene right at the beginning, the scene that I was talking about in the voter registration office, where the woman that tries to register is named Annie Collins, and she's played by Oprah Winfrey. And there's the problem. Because the whole time I'm watching that scene, I understand the power of it, I understand the meaning of it, I understand why it's there. But the whole time I'm looking at Oprah. And that takes me out of the movie. I think it might have been better served if it were played by somebody more anonymous, somebody that I wasn't as familiar with. Because I feel like when I see Oprah, I see the Oprah that I know from outside the movie. So it was kind of jarring. It was very distracting in that way. But like I say, this is a very, very good movie, despite those issues. But I think this is very good. I don't know why it only got 2 Oscar nominations. I thought it should have gotten more. There's another issue that someone brought up the other day. This is a story that needs to be known. It needs to be told. This is not taught in school, and it should be. Someone brought up the idea, is this movie white guilt? I say no. It's only white guilt if you take that with you to the movie. If that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to see. This is an important part of American history, told well, with a cinema artist's great skill. And I think it's a very good movie. My battery's running out, so I'll be back in a minute with some final thoughts and trailers.